During World War II, many observers noticed something strange. When American and German soldiers appeared side by side in newsreels, the Germans often looked sharper, cleaner, almost more professional. American troops, by contrast, sometimes looked a little sloppy. Loose jackets, wrinkled pants, helmets and caps pushed back on their heads. But this difference almost has nothing to do with discipline. In fact, the real reason reveals something important about how the two armies fought the war. The German army placed enormous emphasis on appearance and uniformity. German uniforms were designed to project order, discipline, and authority. Tunics were tailored and fitted closely to the body. Belts were tight, collars were stiff, boots were polished. Even in combat zones, soldiers were expected to maintain a neat, regulated appearance whenever possible. It reflected the German, Prussian-influenced military culture, one that valued formality, hierarchy, and visual precision. The U.S. Army approached things very differently. American uniforms were designed first and foremost for comfort and practicality. Take the standard American field uniform. The standard M37 wool uniform worn throughout the war had a classic, rugged, and almost civilian-looking appearance. Or the famous M1943 field jacket, which was worn intentionally loose. It allowed freedom of movement and room for layers. It also featured large cargo pockets. American soldiers also wore leggings and low boots, which were cheaper and easier to produce and maintain than tall leather boots. German troops, by contrast, wore high jack boots early in the war. Great for appearance, but expensive and difficult to mass produce. In photographs, those tall boots and fitted tunics gave German soldiers a crisp, almost parade-ready look. American uniforms looked more relaxed, even casual. Many European officers even considered the comparatively comfortable American shirt and trouser combination too leisurely and sometimes derided it as golfing clothes. But that looseness served a purpose. The United States had to equip millions of soldiers across multiple continents. Uniforms were produced on an enormous industrial scale. Instead of tailoring clothing to individuals, the Army issued standard sizes designed to fit many different body types. That meant jackets that were sometimes too large, pants that didn't quite fit, and gear worn however soldiers found comfortable. German uniforms, especially early in the war, were produced in smaller quantities and often had better tailoring. But as the war dragged on and shortages increased, even German uniforms became simpler and rougher. Even the iconic tall jack boots were dropped in favor of cheaper low boots and canvas wraps, essentially copying the American system. Another key difference was attitude in the field. American officers often allowed soldiers to adjust their uniforms for comfort. Helmets were tilted back, sleeves were rolled, jackets were worn open. German officers were generally stricter about appearance. But in prolonged combat, even that began to break down. By 1944 and 1945, many German soldiers looked just as exhausted and disheveled as their Allied counterparts. That is the effect of war. Ironically, the sloppy American look often reflected better practicality. Loose clothing allowed for movement and layering in different climates. Simpler equipment was easier to replace. And mass-produced gear meant American soldiers were consistently resupplied, even thousands of miles from home. The German uniform might have looked sharper, but the American system was designed to win a global industrial war. So the next time you see a World War II photograph where German soldiers look crisp and American troops look ragtag, remember, that difference wasn't about discipline. It was about two very different ways of fighting a war. One focused on appearance, tradition, and uniformity. The other focused on comfort, production, and practicality. And in the end, those sloppy uniforms marched all the way into the heart of Germany.